Hi, it's Summer and this is my June wrap up. Can I just say, I read 8 books in June. And 5 of those books I read physically, which is unheard of for me. Usually all of my reading consists of audiobooks, and I usually don't even come close to reading that many books in a month. Not only do I feel like I had a good reading month numbers-wise, but I also feel like I read a lot of really good books this month, and I'm very excited to tell you about them. The first book that I read this month was Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is book number 2 in the Brown Sisters series. This one is about Dani and Zaf. They both work at the same university. He's a security guard and she's a professor. I first of all just have to tell you that Zaf reads romance, which is like my favorite thing ever. I love that he was represented as a guy that's kind of more in touch with his emotions. He also deals with anxiety, which I thought was really great to have some anxiety rep. I know that anxiety is so different person to person, but I really liked the representation of it in this book. And then Dani is very confident and sassy, and I really loved her. I loved their banter together. It was really entertaining and it felt real. There are also some like witchy vibes in this book, and the main plot is fake dating, which is the best. This book was just really cute, but also very steamy, and it just had a lot of really great diversity in it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I will definitely be continuing in the series. The next one that I read was Kingdom of the Cursed by Kerri Maniscalco. This is the second book in this series. This series is about twin witches that live in Italy and get wrapped up in a series of murders that start happening around them. The series has curses, Italian food descriptions, and princes from hell. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought that everything up until the last like 50 pages was kind of unimportant, and I also didn't really love the pacing, but the ending did make me want to pick up the third book, so I am going to read it when it comes out. After that, I picked up the audiobook for A Pho Love Story by Lo and Lee. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm just gonna read my Goodreads review because I feel like it wraps up my thoughts pretty well. I wrote, "This was so cute. Kind of a Romeo and Juliet retelling about 2 Vietnamese teens that work at rival family restaurants. I loved all of the descriptions of food and learning about a culture that I'm not very familiar with. I also loved that this wasn't a super heavy-handed romance. It definitely had a cute little relationship in it, but it wasn't what the entire book was about. I loved the chemistry between the characters and that there was a little mystery about the family feud that unfolded. This was just a wholesome but also kind of a heartbreaking story about family and food and kind of like generational trauma. I really liked the chemistry between the 2 main characters. I thought that it was just really easy and not forced. And like I said, I also really liked that the romance wasn't just like the main focal point of the story. It was definitely like in there, but the whole entire story wasn't just about like their first kiss and the first time they held hands or anything. I just really liked that this book wasn't as dramatic about the romance stuff as most YA is. My reason for the rating is that I just don't really know how memorable this is going to be for me. It's not a new all-time favorite or anything, but it was definitely a really cute read and I enjoyed it. Next, I picked up A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy I. Lin. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I'm also just going to read my Goodreads review for this one. I wrote, "I really enjoyed this, super impressive for a debut novel, and I will definitely be continuing in the series. My only complaints are that I wish that it was longer so that the magic system could have been better explained/explored, that it was adult instead of YA, and that we had a map. Really loved the setting, the magic, and the politics though." I also can't really explain it, but this book gave me major Avatar: The Last Airbender vibes. I don't know why, but it just made me love it that much more. This book is about Ning, whose mom just passed away because she was poisoned, and now her sister is dying of that same poison. So to try to save her sister, she's gonna go to the Imperial City and compete in this competition to be the next like tea master, because the magic in this world revolves around tea and how you brew the tea and what kind of ingredients you use in them. I did have a couple of issues with this that did make it not quite a 5-star for me. There's insta-love, and I just really am not a fan of that trope. Although I feel like the relationship gets a little bit more interesting towards the end, and I really have hope for where it's gonna go in the next book. I really loved how the magic was described when people were using it, but I just kind of was confused about like the rules of the magic. And I didn't really feel like any of that was ever kind of set in stone for us before it started happening. And I feel like if this book were longer, it would have allowed more time for those things to be a little bit more fleshed out. I really kind of hate that I just said fleshed out, but we're just gonna move on. The other thing that I had a little problem with were character descriptions. I don't really think that we got very many of them, and this might just be that I didn't catch them, but I even went back to the very beginning of the book to see if we got a description for the main character, and I don't think that we did. So I'm glad we at least have, I'm guessing this is her on the cover, so I'm glad we at least have this so I can visualize what she looks like, but I wish there were just a little bit more character descriptions in this book. The world and the tea were beautifully described though, and I really just loved how whimsical this book felt. This is also just like the prettiest cover ever, so you should just buy it for aesthetics alone. And now we're gonna get into the books that I read during the Suns Out Books Out readathon, so if you wanna hear any more like in-depth thoughts of any of these books, they'll be in that reading vlog. The first book that I read for it was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, and it is translated by Jenny Tabley Takamori. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. It was just okay. I would say though, if you've been wanting to pick this up, you should just give it a try. It's a short book, so you're not really risking too much by trying it out. This is about Kiko. She's 36 years old and she's been working at the same convenience store for 18 years. Her friends and family really want her to either get a better job that's more like acceptable for somebody her age, or to get married and have kids, and she doesn't want to do either of those things. She's very happy working at the convenience store. She's a very odd, quirky person, and it was really interesting to see what her thought process was like and what she was doing to try to be normal. This book is a commentary on people's place in society, specifically women, and I think what I wanted going into it was more of like a slice of life story about a woman that worked at a convenience store and just more of the day-to-day things that were happening. So that's kind of on me for going into the book with the wrong expectations. After that, I picked up Feelings by Manjit Thop. This is kind of autobiographical poetry with illustrations. It's described as moods that change as quickly as the weather, and it just follows this person's mental health throughout the seasons of the year. Since the author is an illustrator and an artist, there's a lot of that's explored in this book. So I really related to those things because that's also my job. So I don't really know if everybody would have the same experience as me, but I found this book so relatable. This book even kind of made me emotional with some of the like mental health things that it talks about. Both the art style and the prose are just beautiful, and I really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. Next, I picked up Bunny by Mona Awad. This was also a 5-star read for me, and I'm so glad that it was. I feel like this is such a polarizing book, and I always kind of had a feeling that I would be more on the side of liking it, and I'm just so glad that that's what happened. Once again, I like what I said on Goodreads about it, so I'm just gonna read that for you. I said, this book was an absolute fever dream with amazing writing, interesting characters, and a plot that kept me on my toes. I loved the main plot twist. I did not see it coming. And overall, I just had a fun time reading this weird little rabbit cult book. This is about Sam, who's a scholarship student, and I think she's going to school for like poetry or writing or something. She's in this workshop class with this group of girls that she calls the Bunnies because they all call each other Bunny. She thinks that they're really weird and she makes fun of them, but one day they invite her to one of their things that they call the smut salon, and she's intrigued enough to go and see what it's about, and things just get weird from there. I would say if you liked the movie Mean Girls, you would like this. If you liked the TV show Scream Queens, purely for just like the aesthetic of the Chanels though. Also, if you're just a fan of horror and want something really weird, and also if you like pretentious, dreamlike writing, I definitely think you should give this a try. And then my last book of the month was The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. I started the audiobook for this during the readathon. I don't even really know how to describe what this book is about. It's multiple POV. It's kind of historical fiction because a lot of this book takes place in like the early 2000s. This does have a big cast of characters, but I think that the main character is Vincent. Part of the story follows her and her brother working at this hotel. Vincent meets this guy at the hotel, and a year later they're living together as husband and wife. There are a lot of like lies and schemes going on, and this is just a very character driven and kind of slower paced book. And throughout the story, you're slowly being given information that kind of like leads up to this big main thing that happens. And I know that's technically what every single book is about, but think more along the lines of like Taylor Jenkins Reid, like Daisy Jones and the Six and Evelyn Hugo. Kind of that plot structure is the same as this, where you know there's this like kind of mysterious thing and you just slowly get clues that kind of like lead to it in the end. So I would recommend this book if you're already a fan of this author, if you like Taylor Jenkins Reid's newer things that have come out, and if you just like descriptive, character-driven, slower-paced books. My kind of only complaint is that I had a hard time keeping track of all of the characters, but that might also just be because of the audiobook and maybe I just like wasn't paying as close of attention. But overall, I really enjoyed this book and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. That was everything that I read in June though, and I'm just so happy that I found some new favorite books and that I got to participate in such a fun readathon. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you read in June, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.